Synth TV.
Hey everybody, CatSynth TV, and today we are looking at the Buchla Easel V from the Arturia V collection. We're going to be going over the history of the original, then we'll explore some of the presets before diving into synthesis and sound design with the Easel V, and then finally look at some of the advanced features that Arturia has added beyond the original. To understand the Buchla Music Easel, one must understand the approach to synthesizers pioneered by Don Buchla that came to be known as West Coast synthesis. Buchla's initial modular synthesizer, the 100 series, was done in collaboration with Morton Subotnick and Ramon Sender of the San Francisco Tape Music Center in the late 1960s. Unlike the approach of Moog and others that focused on subtractive synthesis with voltage-controlled filters and traditional keyboards, West Coast synthesis centered around adding harmonics to simple waveforms using wave shapers, wave folding, and AM and FM synthesis. Buchla also pioneered the use of low-pass gates, a VCA with a very low-frequency low-pass filter. Buchla refined his approach with the 200 series, which became quite successful and was used by many musicians over the years, including Suzanne Ciani. The original Buchla Music Easel was a compact, performance-oriented subset of the 200 series modules with a unique touchplate keyboard and was released in 1973. It was reissued in 2013 by Buchla Electronic Music Instruments, now Buchla USA. The Buchla Easel V faithfully recreates the look and feel of the original. On the top layer are the various modules, including the low-pass gate, the oscillators, and the various CV sources. The lower half is dominated by the Music Easel keyboard. In the right-hand corner is the Advanced panel, which includes Arturia's add-on features, but we'll get to that later. Finally, there are numerous patch points between the CV sources and various modules. It's worth noting the color coordination here. Each color corresponds to a different CV source. For example, orange is the envelope. Oh yeah! Now let's look at a few of the presets that come with the Buchla Easel V. Okay, now we're going to look more closely at the features of the Easel V and how you can craft your own sounds. First, we're going to look at the complex oscillator and the low-pass gate. There are two low-pass gates controlled by this black section on the right. All the sliders on the Easel V come in pairs, one for the actual value and a second one for the modulation amount. Each modulation has its own black patch point. Let's go ahead and turn up the value of low-pass gate 1, which corresponds to the volume of the complex oscillator. Okay, let's move over to the complex oscillator, which is indicated by this red section. In addition to controls for pitch, it also has a second control for timbre, which essentially folds or modulates the waveform. We can also switch between three basic waveforms and the amount they play into the sound. Now, one thing you may notice is that the sound keeps playing even after I let go of the key. That's because as long as the low-pass gate is open, the sound will continue to be audible. This is where we bring in one of the CV sources, the envelope generator. It has controls to set the attack rate, the sustain level, and the decay rate for the sound. We can then use one of these orange patch points. It can be triggered from a variety of sources. For now, we're going to keep it controlled by the keyboard. Now we're going to go back over to the low-pass gate and drag one of the patch cords over to the CV input. Let's change the modulation amount and turn down the gate. Okay, for good measure, let's drag another patch cord from the envelope to the other low-pass gate so that both of them are being controlled by the same source. Alright, let's continue to look at a few of the other CV sources. In particular, let's look at some of the MIDI connections, which are indicated by these blue sources. Let's go over to the mod wheel, and let's drag a patch cord from there over to the timbre control. Let's hear what that sounds like. As you can see, with only a little bit of CV control of the complex oscillator and low-pass gate, we get quite a bit of expression. But now let's bring in the modulation oscillator. It is a simple waveform oscillator that has a high audio range and a low LFO range. Let's keep it in the audio range and listen to it now by opening up low-pass gate 2. It's actually a lot more interesting to use as a modulation source rather than an oscillator in its own right. So let's switch it to LFO mode, and now we're going to increase the modulation amount of the complex oscillator. We're in AM oscillation mode, so we get a tremolo effect. Let's increase the frequency. We can switch the waveform to get different tremolo effects. Now let's switch the oscillator back to high, which produces more of a ring modulation effect. Now, of course, you can use the CV sources to control the amount of modulation provided to the complex oscillator. In this case, we're going to use one of these purple patch points, which represents aftertouch. and connect that to the modulation amount. I'm applying various amounts of pressure to my keyboard. Okay, let's disconnect that now. Let's look at the low-pass gates in more depth. The low-pass gates actually have three modes. One of them is just a plain VCA mode, which just changes the amplitude of the signal. There is also a pure VCF mode. Let's turn down the modulation to best hear that. But the most common mode to use is the combination. Let's turn the modulation back up. Okay, now let's go back over to the envelope and look at some of its other modes. In addition to the normal sustain mode that we're listening to right now, there's also a transient mode, which is only attack and decay. This gives that quintessential West Coast synthesis percussive sound when attached to a low-pass gate. Now the Easel V also provides other CV sources for transients. Let's go ahead and detach the envelope now, and then we're going to go and look at the pulsar CV source. This is essentially a short-term signal that turns on and off at a particular rate. Like the envelope, it has various trigger sources and modes. Right now we're going to have it run free with keyboard control. It has a single parameter that represents the time length of the pulse. Now one thing to notice about both the pulse and the envelope generator is that shorter times are on top. So by lowering the slider, we are actually increasing the length. Let's now go back to this patch point and use the pulsar to control low-pass gate 1. Okay, let's shorten the time a little bit. Okay, we'll bring even another CV source, randomization, to control the length of the pulsar. You can hear that it changes with each note now and has a very expressive quality. Let's now set the pulsar to be re-triggered with each clock tick. Okay, we're going to take this random source, which, let's admit it, gets a lot of use on Buchla synthesizers, and attach it to a few more patch points. There's quite a bit of variation in the sound now. Let's go ahead and add even more random sources, including to the pitch. Now that's about as West Coast synthesis as you can get, but there is also a sequencer, which allows you to do up to 5-step patterns in addition to random. Let's patch that up to pitch in a few other places now. Okay, let's put the transient envelope back. And use the pulsar to trigger the envelope. We can also get repeated CV patterns using the arpeggiator. It works pretty much the way it does in just about any synthesizer. It has 3 modes: off, random, and ascending. Let's set it to ascending now. Now the keyboard also has these special offset values that you can trigger using these 4 pads. Pressing the pad adds its voltage to the current keyboard or arpeggiator amount. Okay, let's change the clock subdivision of the arpeggiator. Now the features we've seen so far are mostly carryovers from the original Buchla Easel. However, Arturia has added a bunch of new features accessible via the Advanced tab. There are several new modulation sources and possibilities, as well as an effects section. This first section is adorably called the left hand and has a series of function generators that can be used to control a variety of modulation destinations. All right, we have set that up, and now let's set it to the complex oscillator's timbre amount. We could redraw the function in real time to get different kinds of effects and modulation. Now, of course, there's also a right-hand section. This is basically a 16-step sequencer. Let's draw a pattern in there now. But the most original and fun addition is the gravity modulator. It's basically a physics engine with a ball that bounces around the space and interacts with different objects in different ways. The white object is a repulsor. There is also a planet, which has a kind of gravity-like property. Let's drop one of those in now. Okay, now let's map the X and Y coordinates to different modulation destinations. Okay, we can map the Y coordinate. Let's add another X destination just for fun. Okay, let's change some properties of the physics of the space. And maybe add a few more objects, like this mirror sort of thing that you can bounce off of. Of course, you can use the original modulators in conjunction with the advanced modulators. Now the final advanced panel is the effects section. This is basically the standard effects section you see on a lot of software synthesizers. It has 2 effects slots. Let's put chorus in the first one. In my opinion, chorus is actually one of the best effects for the Easel V. Oh yeah, that's nice. Now let's add an analog tape delay. Okay, let's switch back to the pulsar now. We hope you've enjoyed this detailed look at the Buchla Easel V. To find out more, please visit Arturia.com and check out the description below this video. Thanks for watching. Check out more at www.catsynth.com and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.